You're listening to China Africa Talk.
Jambo, ni Bridget akikuletea kipindi kinachohusiana na China na Afrika.
Vous écoutez le dialogue sino-africain avec Bridget.
Everything China, everything Africa.
Olá, você está ouvindo China Africa Talk com Bridget.
سيداتي وسادتي مرحبا بكم في الحوار الصيني العربي مع بريدجيت.
Hello and welcome back to the program. This is China Africa Talk. I'm your host Bridget Mutambirwa and I bring you discussions on what's happening with China and Africa from a Chinese and African perspective. This year marks the 25th anniversary of FOCAC, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Over the past 25 years, this broad framework has delivered tangible benefits for both China and Africa and has been instrumental in advancing the development of China-Africa relations.
It is very obvious that China-African cooperation has been far more reliable, it's been far more stable, it's been far more predictable, and this is what we need.
At Zambia doing research, we interviewed many local firms. The bargaining power is getting stronger away from a single market dependency, such as AGOA.
To help us better understand the magnitude of FOCAC's achievements over the past 25 years and the consistent impact it has on China-Africa relations, I'm joined by Professor Wang Jingjie, Research Assistant Professor at the National School of Development and the Institute of South-to-South Cooperation and Development at Peking University, and Charles Onanaiju, Director of the Center for China Studies in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Bridget.
2025 marks the 25th anniversary of FOCAC. How would you characterize the evolution of China-Africa relations over the last quarter century under this framework? I'll start with you there, Charles.
Thank you. Well, like you know, will be 25 years this October, and it's been an important journey for both sides. China-African cooperation has been much earlier before FOCAC, but FOCAC added greater impetus, FOCAC added greater valve, FOCAC added greater muzzle to it. And it was the forum of the 21st century, founded at the start of the 21st century, and it's proving its worth, both in terms of generating the momentum in China-African cooperation, giving it substantive breadth of life, in terms of deliverables and tangibles, and then more importantly, becoming an excellent framework for engagement between two sides who are almost apart by geography, but have found themselves soul to soul in terms of common ground on a number of issues. So FOCAC has been such an incredible platform to drive an important cooperation, an important historical starting point in China-African cooperation. And the interesting thing about FOCAC is the nature of the engagement. Of course, it does not have the giant edifice of a secretariat with the full compendium of bureaucrats, secretary general, this, that. But it's proving far more dynamic than even formal structures of international organizations. What FOCAC, without belittling the impact of organizations like what FOCAC has delivered in 25 years cannot even come close to what Commonwealth has delivered in more than 60 years. But that is not to say Commonwealth does not have its strengths. It has its strengths. But then FOCAC has proven quite nimble in addressing issues relating to African needs, relating to the particular tangible need of Africa. The long-running challenge for Pan-Africanism, which we all know, Africa being unable to trade with itself, Africa being unable to reach out to itself, Africa being unable to connect with itself, has substantially been dealt with under the framework of FOCAC, bringing a new life, a new lease of life to the idea of Pan-Africanism, to the ideas of a continental platform to enable Africa. Within the framework of FOCAC, connectivity, trade, common positions on issues like peace and security has been concretely dealt with. So FOCAC has been absolutely enabling in some of the critical issues relating to African Renaissance. With little or no formality, like big secretariat, big bureaucracy, it has delivered far more than we can ever think of.
Professor Wang, how would you characterize the China-Africa relations over the last quarter century under this framework?
Thank you, Bridget. Yes, definitely. It is the time for us to look back to evaluate this 25 years of FOCAC. Also, let's celebrate it together. I think we see tremendous change for the past 25 years, from project-led to institution-led, then to standardized and value chain-led cooperation. So there's a huge differences and changes. Over the past 25 years, China-Africa relations under FOCAC definitely have evolved from a new partnership focused on political solidarity to a more comprehensive strategic and cooperative partnership. Those are deeply rooted in mutual development. So we initially see the FOCAC addressed the foundational needs for infrastructure gaps and trade facilitations. 2015, we see the Johannesburg Summit elevated relations to a more comprehensive strategic partner, emphasizing industrialization, agricultural modernization as core pillars. And 2018, definitely an important involvement based on the previous cooperation. We see the Beijing Summit further advance this trajectory by promoting a China-Africa community with a shared future in the new era.
Right.
So these visions anchored in a shared historical struggles and common development goals and multilateralism. So we see those scales and scope expanding, and we see high quality projects and connecting the BRI and China development with the Africa agenda and an Africa development, and China's investment and trade connects with the local community development and a country's national development plans.
Right.
So all those guaranteed a very good next step of cooperation. So definitely this is a great moment to look back and to talk about all the do's and all the good parts, and also for some challenges we can discuss so better effective cooperation can be conducted in the near future.
You've just mentioned we could look forward to better cooperation in the future, but what milestones or achievements of FOCAC over the past 25 years stand out to you most? You also just categorize the evolution process of it.
So as I said before, the 2018 Beijing Summit was definitely a watershed moment. We see the launch of the 8 major initiatives covering industrial promotion, infrastructure connectivity, trade facilitation, and green development. And 2024, the Beijing Summit is another very important milestone. We see these 10 partnership actions for modernization. We see this mutual learning among civilizations and the trade prosperities and industrial chain cooperation. These are all very important achievements. In trade, specifically in this year, we see China's unilateral zero tariff treatment for 53 African countries. Since last year, 2024, we know there are 33, but now expanded to 53. So these eliminating the tariffs on 100 of African product categories, expanding this market. And these are all important initiatives and plans and actions actually are taking. And humanitarian and development aid, such as dispatch of medical teams and construction of medical institutions, are all helping. Right now I'm at Zambia doing research. We witnessed the medical institutions invested by Chinese investors and Chinese government, and we interviewed the local people. They reported largely benefited because of the medical institutions. So all those have addressed critical needs. As I said, healthcare and education, these achievements under FOCAC as a catalyst for Africa's structural transformations. And the milestones, including institutionalization and the scope expanding, secondly, trade expansion and diversification, thirdly, policy alignment, right? And then now for the past 2 years, we see another fourth milestone? Would it be the high quality and the green development? Those are very important milestones. Yes.
I think also for me, infrastructure development and of course trade. But Charles, what milestones of FOCAC over the past 25 years stand out to you the most?
Well, fact is that FOCAC has raised African profile. The fact that in every foreign ministry of every major country, especially in the West, there is African department that pays attention to Africa is for me very significant. Prior to all this, African policy or issues about Africa is virtually taken care by artists, musicians, film actors, all that. There is no serious consideration of Africa, Western foreign policy. We know the Bob Geldof. We know some of them. Human African pictures in Western policy only as a theater for humanitarian. FOCAC has raised the profile of Africa. Like I said, there is virtually no Western foreign ministry that we do not have a serious department of Africa. So for me, that is very significant. But in terms of tangibles, in terms of deliverables, it is very obvious. We could see it from Ethiopia, from the first electrified railway between Ethiopia and Djibouti, cutting travel time between Ethiopian heartland, industrial heartland, to the coast of Djibouti from 5 days to less than 10 hours, from Nairobi to Mombasa, the railway from Abuja to Kaduna, from Lagos to Ibadan, looking forward to come from Kano to Abuja, is all game-changing. Ports we could see in Nigeria from the 4 airport renewals, which has given us a pouch as a regional hub. And then the most important, the Lekki Deep Sea Port, which has given Nigeria a spotlight in the maritime industry, especially within the region. Across Africa, the change is simply revolutionary. And like I told you earlier, it answers one of the most fundamental questions in Africa, the question of connectivity. The question of Africa that trade with itself, the question of Africa that trade with itself, that connects with itself, that reaches out to itself. FOCAC has been extremely, very, very useful in responding to those important questions that was raised over 60 years ago when we speak of Pan-Africanism. So FOCAC has delivered tangibles. FOCAC has mobilized resources that have given Africa a spotlight, a very important spotlight in the world. Like you know, Africa today has become the beautiful bride. Everybody wants to reach out to Africa because the FOCAC process has brought a distinguished spotlight on Africa. And of course, you could see what goes on, the exchanges, trade exchanges. For the past 16 years, China has been Africa's biggest trading partner. And this is not theoretical. It is putting food on people's table. People are becoming wealthier. People are becoming richer. Young people are being absorbed into businesses.
Right.
It's something that is quite changing the face of Africa. Previously, what we see is Western donors, Western musicians, Western actors in refugee camps feeding children with bread. Today, what we see is African technicians comparing notes with their counterparts in construction site.
Right.
It is purely revolutionary in African context because it is responding to some of the serious issues that Africa is concerned about. Let me state very emphatically, FOCAC process is a journey, is a process.
Okay.
This is not to say there are no challenges relating to it. But like I have always said, the challenges in China-African cooperation can only be engaged with far more cooperation, not less.
Compared to other frameworks, Charles, how consistent and impactful has FOCAC been advancing Africa's development and China-Africa relations and the wider South-to-South cooperations? What's your take on that?
Well, like 30th September, ending the 25-year run of AGOA, America's Africa Growth Opportunity Act, which was meant entry of African goods into American markets. For the past 25 years, AGOA has run and supposedly to enable Africans to access U.S. market duty-free. What we have seen in the past 25 years is more or less flip-flop. Yes, some few countries in the region, take for example Ethiopia, take for example Kenya, Lesotho, South Africa, exported automobile, fabrics, textile material. But for the majority of African countries, it's been flip-flop. It has not delivered tangible. Trade between the United States and Africa under AGOA has been reasonably insignificant compared to what we have seen between China and Africa in the past 25 years. So if you're comparing the trade of $64 billion with United States and then compare against $300 billion with China, the difference is clear. AGOA has made its contribution, only that it is politically tainted. It's always been politically abused by Washington. We've had several countries taken out of AGOA on politically motivated issues. Ethiopia 2 years ago was taken out of AGOA. Ethiopia was a frontline country that benefited tremendously from AGOA. But when they had issues with the northern Ethiopia, they were taken off the list. AGOA has been more or less, it's been politically tainted, unlike the FOCAC process. Unlike trade between China and Africa, which has been steady, which has been growing, and in recent times, of course, we will come to it, China providing duty-free access to African countries, all African countries who have diplomatic relations with China, which is a game changer. So if you look at what has happened between the European Union, between the United States, and between China and Africa, it is very obvious that China-African cooperation has been far more reliable, it's been far more stable, it's been far more predictable. And this is what you need in a relationship: predictability, stability. The topsy-turvy in relations, punctuated by political consideration with United States, with EU, had not enabled Africa to benefit from the full of some of the initiatives. But China-African cooperation has been bereft of such politically motivated consideration. It has reliability, it has stability, and it has predictability. And that is very significant in driving a bilateral cooperation of any type.
Let's move on forward there, Professor Wang. What makes China-Africa friendship distinctive within the broader landscape of South-to-South cooperation? What would be your take?
Yes, thank you, Bridget. Definitely, this is a great question you proposed. We, as African studies scholars, always regarded the China-Africa friendship as a flagship cooperation project or a flagship cooperation initiative, because we see many aspects can make China-Africa relationship distinctive with these South-South cooperation. Let me name some of them. Okay. First, we can see these kind of cooperation is not just cooperation. Actually, it's not a cooperation action or plan. It is actually creating a platform. A platform is very important because we can gather the different stakeholders on this platform to solve problems based on different stakeholders. So this platform initiation is one of the distinctive aspects we need to pay attention. What I mean about it is that we can see few South-South relationships have a comparable, detailed, jointly negotiated action plan within this platform. And also, those action plans are highly tied to concrete targets, very specific number of the projects, infrastructure projects, specific number of training programs, and specific livelihood projects such as small and beautiful projects. Those are all very specific number we set. For few South-South relationships have that actually. The second distinctive aspect is the norms of non-interference and co-modernization. I think it is definitely stands out among all the cooperation initiatives. So the action plan frames the cooperation as a joint pursuit of modernization. We, China, and not only the government level, but also the investor, private sector level, really value this modernization and not only benefited China, but if only us benefited, this is not a China-Africa friendship cooperation program we want it to be. If we are friends, we want both of us, all of us, can have these unconditional development together. So all these sort of a mentality have been delivered through all these norms of non-interference and co-modernization is very important. Thirdly, will be this continental integration focus. We really value this direct support for African Union and for Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, etc. All shows a unique emphasis on China's regional public goods. It's not one country China prefers, so we just do the business with the specific country because we're best friends. We are friends with all Africa for the goal of Africa's regional public goods, not only bilateral deals. Right. So this is a more broader and a bigger vision for the common development of human beings. This is a bigger goal. So these kind of friendships stands out in the South-South cooperation due to its in depth of solidarity, equality, and a mutual benefit. Very pragmatic, actually, if you see this friendship addressing Africa's most pressing needs aligned with China's development plans. So this is a true win-win situation. And China's support is unconditional and emphasizing this ownership and sustainability. Of course, this is an evolving process. Right. We are gradually conducting these kind of cooperation initiatives, but it's happening. We already see that kind of a beacon of equality and a shared prosperity on the way.
I'd also want to pick out here, which you also mentioned there, the integration and also the aspect of continuity, which I think has been very critical in the whole relationship. You were talking about trade just now, Charles. China has been Africa's largest trading partner for 16 consecutive years. Now, how would you evaluate this trade on Africa's modernization drive?
Well, you see, as far as I know, this trade has been very important for Africa, and China has remained open and has constantly opened up more, not just to the world, but has been opening up to Africa. And what we saw recently in June at the 4th edition of China-Africa Trade and Economic Expo was another important milestone in China-African cooperation, because the Chinese side announced its intention for 100% duty-free access of African products into China, right, with concessional approval at the port of entry, concessional and speedy processing of African products. I think this responds to very structural issues about African economy. Like one of the key challenges of African economy was its colonial heritage of monocultural economies that depend on some single products. Yeah. Like in Nigeria, we have oil, oil providing almost 95% of foreign exchange receipts. And that is very, very dangerous. And in some other African countries, we have that challenge of monocultural economy that is dependent on single mineral. China opening up, especially on agricultural products, provide us a leeway to diversify the economy of African countries. Like in Nigeria, they have the best of soybean, you have sesame seed, you have cashew nut, you have ginger, you have cocoa, you have all manner of agricultural products. So it gives countries in Africa the impetus, the reason to diversify the structures of their economy. So it has, beside the liquidity it provides, it has another very game-changing effect of affecting diversification of African economies, So for me, it is beyond just trade. It has implication for the structure of African economy, rebuilding it in a way that it becomes more diversified and respond to the need of the global market. So for me, this is very, very important beyond just the income that comes from it. Of course, that is very important, but significantly in the diversification of the economies of African countries. So it is an incredible and very, very important game changer. And we ask African countries to take advantage because, like I said, Africa opportunity in China-African cooperation is there. Yeah. But you must step up to convert these opportunities into advantage. Opportunity can last forever, even for an individual. Opportunity can start you in the field for hundreds of years. If you don't move, it doesn't get converted into your advantage. So Africa must step up. That's my challenge to African countries, to step up in engaging the opportunities of China-African cooperation, especially with this important duty-free access to Chinese huge market. If only countries in Africa can secure even as small as 1% or 2% of China huge market, that could be very impactful for the future of Africa.
Professor Wang, China announced a zero tariff policy on goods imported from the 53 African countries with diplomatic ties. When we look at trade, what opportunities could this bring to Africa from your perspective?
Actually, in the middle of this year, I wrote an article to discuss about this zero tariff for 53 African country partners. I think it means a lot. It means a lot not only for China but also for Africa. Any initiatives that plan will taking off gradually and benefiting gradually. But we can see for these 53 countries, zero tariff initiative, we see first immediate market access. This is very quick, big change. So China has raised these duty-free coverage to 100 of tariff lines. Last year, 2024, initiated December, and in August of this year, 2025, extended to 100 zero tariff coverage of 53 African countries. You see this, not 40, not 41, it's 53, right? It's integration. We want development for all the nations as long as they wanted to. They wanted to work with us. We have this a bigger vision and mission, not only with the diplomatic ties, but also follow the market rules, follow the market principles. So this immediate market access opened a big door for those African countries who wanted to do trade and business with us, taking off really quick. And also it aligned with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, highly connected with that. So we can see Chinese firms and investment like this time we're at Zambia doing research. We interviewed many local firms, Zambian firms, and also Chinese firms. We see they locate processing factories, accumulate regional value, then export it to China duty-free, opening a variable like coffee, textile, one of the big textile company starting in Zambia, gonna make this exported textile to China and other countries more convenient and boost the local value-added industry. And we are going to actually visit it to the industry part. And also, for this fertilizers and chemicals and refined metals. It used to be raw material, but now it's refined metals. The value added all close the gap of just the single economy, right? Single economy is very fragile. But now, based on the natural resources and comparative advantages of the local community, this value added products exported to China and other countries not only increase the trade and investment, but also create thousands of jobs for the local community. And for the government, they have more taxations and a very healthy economic circle starting because of the international trade agreement can boost all this local reaction of the business. So it's very quick. This kind of in no time in between. This is kicking off really quick. And also for Africa, I think for this free trade coverage, we see a bargaining power is getting stronger, especially for this their bargaining power externally, preferential access to China. Let African government negotiate better offers from other partners and diversify away from a single market dependency, such as AGOA, AGOA, right? Of course, after the Trump administration, the AGOA doesn't work that much. But you see, Bridget, it's very important. The expiration date of AGOA is September 30th. So whether it is going to be renewed or not, we need our attention. Maybe next session we can talk about the renewal or non-renewal of AGOA. This needs our attention. It might reshift the trade relationship between U.S. and Africa and also China. And Africa.
It could actually be opportunity over a crisis.
Yes, totally. This is the new dynamic for the world. So let's looking forward for more developmental chances for Africa. Let's see what's going to happen.
Listeners, that concludes the first part of our discussion. In the second part, we will turn to the future, the areas that will shape the next stage of the China-Africa partnership under the Beijing Action Plan 2025 to 2027, and how stakeholders can leverage these commitments to drive long-term transformation in line with Africa's Agenda 2063. You can subscribe to our online newsletter on CGTN or Substack to get more insights on China-Africa relations. Just search China-Africa Talk. For now, it's goodbye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post it on social media or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. See you next time.